To the world we all know, which may or may not be the best world possible. Once again, Lent is just around the corner. So, what I thought to do today, ladies and gentlemen, because I have a day off, I'm actually recording today's video at just before 12:30 in the afternoon, which is relatively early as things are going. But for those who know a little bit about me and about this channel, we don't usually wait around for dates to happen. We jump the gun somewhat. We make a head start. We get things underway. So, allow me to explain to you a little bit of an interesting history I have with the season of Lent. But before we get there, there is one other interesting bit of trivia I want to share with you guys. And it was exactly 5 years ago today, because 5 years ago, Lent just so happened to fall on March 8th, on the 18th of February, which is a really cool little coincidence. Just thought to drop that there. But basically, back in 2021, it was snowing for the best part of about six weeks from the beginning of the year. And it was ironically when we got to Ash Wednesday, where all the snow, all the remnants of winter, it would seem, had completely melted away. And yeah, honestly, by it was the morning of Ash Wednesday. It was still, spots of white every so often on the pavement, stuff like that. By the end of the day, it was completely gone. So, because, interestingly enough, we've started this year, ladies and gentlemen, where people complain that it has rained virtually every single day throughout the year. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Maybe this is a little bit of an interesting sign of coincidence that because the weather outside is, it's the sky, there is no clouds. I mean, it is still cold, don't get me wrong, but there is no clouds, no sign of any rain or any bad turns with the weather whatsoever. It's actually very, very pristine and very, very it's just kind of nice to look at. And I'm probably gonna go for a little bit of a short walk later on anyway, just for, maybe for a walk, maybe down the gym, just to get a bit of fresh air, a little bit of exercise, stuff like that. It'll be a nice, pleasant way to spend the afternoon. Because, well, once we come back, this is when the real work begins. So, now I get to explain a little bit about my history with the season of Lent. So, back in 2011, just as we had spent, the family had spent about a whole week in this place called Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. And it was about just before we left, I made the conscious decision to say, I'm going to give up meat for Lent. I was, so this was 15 years ago, by the way. I was just 13 years old. And the whole family laughed at me for doing this. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. I did it. I managed to get through the whole of Lent completely meat-free. Which 40 whole days without having any. It's an interesting achievement. It's an interesting and a unique achievement, and it's the sort of thing that, that I know fine well there are people who probably go their entire lives without eating meat. However, try demonstrating to somebody who never tried something like that before, and you'll be surprised about. What an interesting time this was, because this was also the time when I had my freak accident and I was nearly killed. So that was 2011 was an interesting time, all right. So this is something I tried to do for the prevailing 15 years, by the way, is to do Lent by giving up meat. And it's to be said, it has been a little bit more difficult as the years go. I think I managed to do it for about the first 4 years, and then after that, I would go about 2 weeks or maybe 3 and stuff like that, and there would be little stumbling blocks here and there. Mind you, with that being said, about 3 years ago, I actually managed to go a whole 6 weeks from the very beginning of the year to round about the beginning of Lent, completely as a vegetarian. People have now, to be fair, people have said to me in years gone by is that actually being a vegetarian is actually not really that good for your health, because your body does need certain proteins and certain other things that you can't get from plants, and you rather getting from meat. And whilst yes, I do agree with that. There are certain great things you can get from meat that you just simply can't get from vegetables or plants or fruits and stuff like that. But again, part of me wants to say that it's not really for the sake of a lifestyle change is why I'm doing this. Part of the reason why I do it is to prove that I can go without something. That maybe the issue facing quite a lot of people of my age is the need to overly excess yourself with something. That the only way to seek happiness is to have more of something than less, to be in greater abundance. Whilst it's certainly true, ladies and gentlemen, that it's probably also not true, and there are plenty of people who go through their lives who are very, very frugal with their possessions, there is a little bit more to the season of Lent than I'm trying to give on. You see, what I'm trying to do, and I think this year is going to be very specific. I don't know why, it's just because it's the first time I've thought of trying this out, is that they do often say, for Roman Catholics, is that when the season of Lent does come around, it's not so much about going without, but it's also, probably even more so, the case of what can you do extra. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I do apologize. People have told me to stop using that phrase, but it's just a way of just I'll get to sort of like the origins behind stuff like that in a later video. But doing things extra is actually a very, very important thing to note down. So one of the things certainly I want to do is to get back into a routine where I had really, really good teeth. Sort of get into a better routine for doing exercise and going to the gym more regularly again. And trying to sort of like work things back into my life that are going to make me healthier, stronger. Just stuff like that. I'm not talking about going overboard or anything like that, but trying to improve yourself is always a worthwhile investment. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, this for me is my biggest investment. And the more I invest in myself, guess what? The better I think I will become in years gone by. But then, of course, there's doing things extra for the world around you. You may remember, right about at the beginning of the year, I was doing a few videos here and there about litter picking in my home village. And whilst this has been something I've done every other Sunday, just sort of not on camera, around about where I live, I might want to start documenting that sort of activity again, merely just to showcase that, guess what, that we're certainly out there and we're certainly wanting to do it, but also that, guess what, it just makes the place look better again. But is it necessarily the best thing in the world to be able to do it like on camera? And I'll explain why. Because they do often say, when it comes to the relationship between Catholicism and charity, the idea being is you've got to be able to do something for charity, but you've got to make sure that nobody sees you doing it. The idea is that the left hand mustn't know what the right hand is doing. And this is an interesting case in mind, everyone, because I certainly do want to raise the idea that, guess what? It's possible to make this country great and beautiful again, but it also has to do with a lot of about what can you do for your country and what can you contribute to society that means that people won't live in fear, and it just the place just looks better all around. It's an interesting point of contention, don't get me wrong. But what I think is even more interesting is, well, what is the actual result of stuff like this? It's not an easy thing to do, ladies and gentlemen, to go out of your way to do things charitable, because it means doing things for the benefit of nobody except the people you are doing it for. And in that vein, can charity pick like litter picking, can it technically be called a charity? Well, yes and no. I imagine. Well, yes, because guess what? It makes my village cleaner and incredibly picturesque. Because I take a I do take an inordinate amount of pride, ladies and gentlemen, in where I live, because guess what? I've lived here for nearly 30 years, and it is one of the most beautiful places, um, certainly that I've ever been to in my life. Um, I would rather be here than the Sistine Chapel. Let me put it to you like that. Plus, all of my stuff is here anyway, so makes sense, I suppose. Then interest. But here's why I think it's also not a thing about charity, is because who really benefits from the place being cleaner? Well, actually, quite a lot of people benefit. I mean, just to give you one example, dogs benefit from this place being cleaner, because guess what? Any dog could just sort of walk past something, they don't know what it is, they immediately eat it, and before you know it, they're in the veterinarians fighting for their lives. I don't know how often that thing does happen. I know slugworms and stuff like that is a bit of it's a nasty point of contention for dog owners, but considering where I live is also a pretty high breeding ground in terms of people who own dogs. I think it's something about like 1 every 10 houses where, like in the village I live, we are people own dogs. Um, but yeah, just like I said before, I think keeping the place clean, tidy, organized. I think it makes things better. And certainly I want to continue on that trend, and even if, you know what, I might be alone in this, well, not really. I do happen to know that there is a bit of a nice little organization here in my village that does also like litter picking and stuff like that. However, it would be a good way to spend quite a lot of my Sunday mornings, to actually just go out and just do a little bit extra for the community. It may be seen as a bit of a thankless task, but at the same time, you know what? That it could spark something, ladies and gentlemen. You never know where it might all lead. And I think that's just about all I'm gonna say for now, because, well, once again, there's work to be done. Always more work, and I best get back to it. So, thank you.